Katie Sullivan checked her uniform one more time as the transport ship docked with Harmony Point Station. She smoothed down her brown hair and made sure her lieutenant bars were straight. This was the biggest day in human history, and she wanted to look professional. The space station was huge, bigger than anything Katie had ever seen. It spun slowly in the darkness of space, its lights twinkling like stars. Inside this station, 12 different alien species were waiting to decide if humans could join their galactic club. Katie felt excited and nervous at the same time. Captain Jake Morrison walked up beside her. He was a good captain, fair and smart. Katie had worked with him for 2 years now. He looked more nervous than she felt, which was saying something. "Remember, Sullivan," Morrison said quietly, "we represent all of humanity today. Every human who ever lived brought us to this moment." Katie nodded. She understood the weight of it. Back home in Montana, her family was probably watching the news, hoping for good results. Her little brother Danny had made her promise to get pictures of real aliens. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Katie followed Morrison into the station. The gravity felt lighter than Earth normal, and the air smelled different. Clean, but strange. Like metal and ozone mixed together. Their guide was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. It introduced itself as Ambassador Kelena from the Altarian Republic. Its voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke. "Welcome to Harmony Point," Kelena said. "We are honored to host this historic gathering. Please follow me to the main conference hall." They walked through corridors filled with the strangest sights Katie had ever seen. Aliens of every shape and size moved past them. Some looked almost human, just taller or with different colored skin. Others were so weird that Katie had to stop herself from staring. One creature looked like a walking tree with eyes. Another moved like liquid mercury but wore a fancy uniform. A group of small furry beings chattered in high voices as they scurried past. Katie wanted to take pictures, but Morrison had warned her that might be rude. The conference hall took Katie's breath away. It was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Delegates from 12 different species sat in carefully arranged sections. Each group had their own special seating designed for their body type. At the center of it all sat the most impressive being Katie had ever seen. Zeth Kalar, the supreme apex leader of the Veltar Empire, towered over everyone else. He stood 12 feet tall with scales that looked like green crystal. 4 powerful arms crossed over his massive chest. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake's eyes. Katie had read about the Veltar in her briefing materials. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Other species feared and respected them. Zeth Kalar himself was said to be over 500 years old and had never lost a political battle. When the humans entered, all conversation stopped. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at them. Katie felt like a bug under a microscope, but she kept her face calm. Growing up on a ranch taught you not to show weakness to predators. Ambassador Kelena led them to a small section with human-sized chairs. The furniture looked new, like it had been built just for this meeting. Katie sat down and looked around at all the different alien faces staring at them. Beings of the Galactic Confederation. Zeth Kalar's voice boomed through the hall. It was deep and commanding, the kind of voice that expected obedience. "We gather today to discuss the petition of the species calling themselves humans for membership in our civilized union." He said the word humans like it tasted bad in his mouth. "These creatures come from what our scientists classify as a Class 9 death world," Zeth Kalar continued. "A planet so hostile that the very fact they evolved there defies probability. They call this world Earth." Katie frowned. She had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. Sure, there were storms and wild animals and accidents, but that was just life. Every planet probably had challenges. A delegate from the insect-like Hive Collective stood up. It looked like a giant praying mantis wearing robes. Supreme Leader, our studies show that this Earth experiences regular catastrophic events. Massive storms, seismic activity, temperature extremes that would kill most known life forms. How did anything survive there, much less develop intelligence? Morrison started to answer, but Zefkalar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. That is precisely the concern, the Veltar leader said. These humans are survivors of constant violence and death. They are, by definition, warriors bred by their world's cruelty. Can such beings ever truly join a peaceful confederation? Katie listened to the aliens talk about humans like they were dangerous animals. It bothered her more than she expected. Back home, humans were just people trying to live their lives, raise their families, and make things better for their children. A delegate that looked like a floating jellyfish with eyes spoke next. The psychological profiles are disturbing, it said in a voice like bubbles popping. Humans show abnormal tolerance for pain, stress, and fear-inducing stimuli. This suggests severe psychological damage from their environment. Furthermore, added a bird-like creature with bright feathers, their entertainment media celebrates violence and conflict. They create stories about war, survival, and overcoming impossible odds. What peaceful species find such things entertaining? Katie wanted to laugh. Did they mean movies and books? Every culture told stories about heroes facing challenges. How else were you supposed to teach important lessons? Morrison finally got permission to speak. He stood up and faced the assembly with dignity. Honored delegates, he said, humanity has indeed faced challenges in our development. But those challenges taught us valuable lessons. We learned to work together, to help each other, and to never give up hope. We believe these qualities would make us good members of your confederation. Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The tree-like creature rustled its leaves dismissively. Pretty words, Zefkalar said. But words are easy. The question remains, can humans control their violent instincts when faced with real pressure? Can beings from a death world truly function in civilized society? The Veltar leader's yellow eyes fixed on Morrison, then moved to Katie. She met his gaze steadily, the way her father had taught her to look at angry bulls. Don't show fear, but don't challenge unnecessarily. Perhaps, Zefkalar continued, a demonstration would be more useful than words. Katie felt a chill run through the room. Even the alien seemed nervous about where this was heading. Morrison's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. What kind of demonstration? The captain asked. Zefkalar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. A test of restraint. We will apply various pressures to see how humans react when pushed to their limits. If you can maintain control under extreme stress, perhaps there is hope for your species after all. The hall fell silent. Katie could hear the soft hum of the station's life support systems. She looked at Morrison and saw the same thought in his eyes that was running through her mind. They had come here hoping for acceptance and friendship. Instead, they were about to be put through some kind of alien torture test. The worst part was, they probably had to agree to it. Refusing would just confirm what the aliens already believed about human aggression. Morrison straightened his shoulders. Very well, Supreme Leader. Humanity accepts your test. Zefkalar's smile grew wider. Around the hall, alien delegates leaned forward in their seats. Some looked excited, others worried. All of them seemed to think they were about to see something that would change their understanding of the human race. Katie sat quietly in her chair, watching the preparations begin. She thought about her family back on the ranch, about the people of Earth who were counting on this mission's success. Whatever these aliens had planned, she and Morrison would face it together. She just hoped it wouldn't be as bad as that time she had to help deliver a calf during a blizzard with a broken generator and no power. Now that had been a real test of staying calm under pressure. The testing chamber was nothing like Katie expected. She thought it would be some kind of scary torture room, but instead, it looked like a medical facility. Clean white walls, soft lighting, and equipment that hummed quietly. The aliens had spent 3 hours setting everything up while she and Morrison waited in a side room. War Commander Vexmal supervised the preparations. He was another Veltar, smaller than Zethkalar, but still intimidating. His scales were darker, almost black, and he moved with the quick precision of a soldier. Katie noticed he never turned his back on the humans, even when they were sitting calmly in chairs. The stress evaluation will proceed in stages, Vexmal explained to the assembled delegates. We will apply increasing psychological and physical pressure to test the subject's ability to maintain rational behavior. Katie watched alien technicians wheeling in strange machines. Some looked like fancy computers with screens full of alien writing. Others resembled medical scanners, but bigger and more complex. One device was just a black cube that seemed to absorb light around it. What exactly are you planning to do to us? Morrison asked. His voice stayed calm, but Katie could see tension in his shoulders. Nothing harmful, Zethkalar said from his elevated platform. We simply want to observe human reactions under controlled stress conditions. Every species has breaking points. We need to understand yours. A delegate that looked like a giant sea urchin with eyes raised one of its spiny arms. In our studies of human media, we observe that your species often becomes violent when threatened or frustrated. Is this accurate? Morrison started to answer. But Katie spoke first. People get upset sometimes, just like anyone else. But most folks try to handle problems without fighting. The sea urchin delegate made a bubbling sound that might have been laughter. Most species do not produce entertainment about warfare and survival challenges. Your cultural products suggest a fascination with violence. Katie shrugged. We also make movies about romance and comedy. You probably didn't study those ones. Several aliens exchanged looks. Apparently they had not expected casual responses from the humans. Vexmal gestured to his technicians. We will begin with Captain Morrison. Please step into the testing area. Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. Immediately, machines began scanning him with lights and beams. Numbers appeared on screens around the room. Katie guessed they were measuring his heart rate, brain activity, and other body functions. First test, Vexmal announced. Emotional stress response. A large screen lit up in front of Morrison. Images appeared on it, clear as real life. Katie saw Morrison's wife and children playing in their backyard on Earth. The scene looked peaceful and happy. Then the images changed. Morrison's family was suddenly in danger. The house was on fire. His wife was screaming for help. His children were trapped. Morrison could hear their voices calling for him, but he could not reach them. Katie watched Morrison's face go pale. His hands clenched into fists. The alien monitors showed his heart rate climbing rapidly. Sweat appeared on his forehead. Fascinating, whispered a snake-like delegate. Notice how his aggressive instincts activate immediately when his family unit is threatened. Morrison stood perfectly still, but Katie could see the effort it took. His whole body was tense like a coiled spring. The fake images kept playing, showing worse and worse things happening to his loved ones. Stop, Morrison said quietly. The test is not complete, Vexmal replied. I said stop. Morrison's voice got harder, but he did not move from his position. Images kept playing for another minute before finally shutting off. Morrison stood there breathing heavily, his face flushed with anger and fear. Acceptable control, Zethkalar noted, but clearly affected. The subject showed significant physiological stress response and verbal aggression. Katie thought that was unfair. Anyone would be upset seeing their family in danger, even if they knew it was fake. The aliens seemed to think that having emotions was some kind of weakness. Second test, Vexmal continued. Physical discomfort tolerance. They put Morrison in a chair that looked normal but apparently was not. Katie could not see exactly what it was doing to him, but Morrison's jaw tightened, and his breathing changed. The alien monitors showed increasing stress levels. Minutes passed. Morrison gripped the arms of the chair but did not cry out or ask them to stop. His face got paler and sweat dripped down his cheeks. "Remarkable pain tolerance," observed the jellyfish delegate. "Most species would have reached their limit by now." "Third test," Texmal said. "Crisis simulation." This time they put Morrison in what looked like a spaceship cockpit. Alarms started blaring. Warning lights flashed red. A computer voice announced that the ship was losing life support and would explode in 5 minutes. Morrison immediately started working the controls, trying to fix the fake emergency. His training kicked in, and he began following proper procedures for the situation. But the computer kept reporting that nothing was working. The countdown continued. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. Morrison kept trying different solutions, his movements getting faster and more desperate. The alien delegates watched with intense interest as his stress levels climbed higher and higher. With 30 seconds left on the countdown, Morrison finally stopped trying to fix the controls. He sat back in the chair and waited. His face was calm again, accepting. "Time expired," the computer announced. "The simulation ended. Interesting," Zethkalar mused. The subject showed excellent problem-solving instincts and persistence, but ultimately accepted defeat without violence or panic. Katie was proud of her captain. He had handled every test with dignity, even when the aliens were clearly trying to break him down. Now, Zethkalar's yellow eyes turned to Katie. "We test the female." Katie stood up and walked to the testing area. She felt dozens of alien eyes watching her every move. Some of the delegates were taking notes. Others whispered among themselves in languages she could not understand. The scanning machines examined her just like they had Morrison. Katie stood still and let them do their work. She was curious about what the tests would show. "Subject appears unusually calm," noted one of the technicians. "Baseline stress levels are lower than expected." Vexmil looked surprised. "Begin emotional stress test." The screen lit up again. This time it showed Katie's family ranch back in Montana, her parents, her brother Danny, the horses and cattle she had grown up with. It was so realistic she could almost smell the hay and leather. Then the scene changed to show disaster. Wildfires swept across the ranch. The animals were in panic. Her family was trying to evacuate, but they were trapped by the flames. Katie could hear her mother calling her name. Katie watched the images with interest. The fake fire looked very realistic. The special effects were impressive. But she had actually lived through 3 real wildfires on the ranch, so this seemed almost tame by comparison. Her heart rate stayed steady. Her breathing remained normal. The alien monitors showed no significant changes. "Curious," Vexmil frowned. "Perhaps the scenario is not sufficiently threatening." Increase emotional impact. The images got worse. Now her family was not just in danger, they were actually being hurt. Katie saw terrible things happening to the people she loved most. She felt sad watching it, but she also knew it was fake. Real wildfires did not have dramatic music and perfect camera angles. Real emergencies were messy and confusing, not choreographed like a movie. "Still no significant response," reported a technician. "Subject appears emotionally detached." Katie was not detached. She just knew the difference between real problems and pretend ones. When Danny had actually broken his leg falling from a horse, Katie had stayed calm and helped get him to the hospital. When their neighbor's barn caught fire, she had helped fight the blaze without panicking. This was just aliens showing her scary pictures on a screen. "Physical discomfort test," Vexmol ordered, sounding frustrated. They put Katie in the same chair that had clearly bothered Morrison. She sat down and waited to see what it would do. The chair began doing something to make her uncomfortable. Katie could not tell exactly what, but it felt like a cross between sitting on thorns and having electricity run through her muscles. Not pleasant, but not unbearable either. She had felt worse things. Like the time she got kicked by a horse and had to finish her chores before going to get medical attention. Or when she helped deliver calves in sub-zero weather with no feeling in her fingers. Or just regular ranch work on hot summer days when the temperature hit over 100 degrees. No significant stress response. The technician reported after several minutes. Catty looked around at the alien faces staring at her. They all seemed confused and worried. She was not sure why. The tests were uncomfortable, but not terrible. Crisis simulation, Vexmil said. But his voice sounded less confident now. They put Katie in the same spaceship simulator Morrison had used. The alarm started blaring and the countdown began. 5 minutes until explosion. Katie looked at the controls and started working through the emergency procedures she had learned in training. When the first few solutions did not work, she tried others. When those failed, she started thinking of creative alternatives. With 2 minutes left, she realized the simulation was designed to be unsolvable. That was the point. The fear inducer looked like nothing Katie had ever seen. It was a metal sphere about the size of a basketball, covered in strange symbols that seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. The device floated in the air without any visible support, slowly rotating and humming with a sound that made her teeth ache. What exactly does that thing do? Morrison asked. His voice was steady, but Katie could tell he was worried. Vexmil gestured to the floating sphere with obvious respect. This is our most advanced psychological warfare device. It projects pure terror directly into the subject's mind, bypassing rational thought to trigger the deepest survival instincts. A delegate that looked like a crystal spider clicked its legs together nervously. Perhaps we should reconsider. The device is quite powerful. How powerful? Katie asked. Z. Itakaler answered from his platform. Every known species has a breaking point when exposed to this device. The bravest Altarian warriors collapse within 30 seconds. The emotionally disciplined Zephyrians last perhaps 2 minutes before their mental control shatters completely. The jellyfish delegate bobbed in its tank. The device does not cause physical harm, but the psychological effects can be significant. Subjects often require counseling afterward. Katie looked at the floating sphere. It did not look particularly threatening to her, just strange. And you want to use this on me? The previous tests were inconclusive, Vexmil said. Your responses were so unusual that we question whether our equipment was functioning properly. The fear inducer will provide definitive results. Morrison stepped forward. I object to this. You've already proven your point. Lieutenant Sullivan has shown remarkable self-control under stress. Remarkable for a human, perhaps, Zethkalar replied coldly, but we need to understand the true limits of your species. If humans can genuinely resist our most powerful psychological weapon, that information is vital for the Confederation's security. Katie understood what he was really saying. The aliens were not just testing human self-control anymore. They were trying to figure out if humans could be controlled at all. If the fear inducer did not work on her, they would see humans as a potential threat instead of potential members. It's okay, Captain, Katie said. I'll do it. The alien delegates began moving to safer positions around the chamber. Several species retreated behind protective barriers. The technicians operated their equipment from behind thick, transparent walls. Only Katie remained in the open testing area, facing the floating sphere. We will begin at minimum intensity, Vexmil announced. The device will gradually increase power until we observe a fear response. Wait, called out a delegate that looked like a walking flower. Should we not have medical personnel standing by? The psychological trauma could be severe. I'll be fine, Katie said. She was getting a little annoyed with all the dramatic buildup. Back home, when something needed to be done, you just did it. You did not spend an hour talking about how dangerous it might be. Bexmal activated the device. The sphere began glowing. With a soft blue light, Katie felt a strange tingling sensation in her mind, like someone was trying to whisper scary thoughts to her. She could sense the device attempting to make her afraid, but it felt artificial and obvious, like watching a horror movie with bad special effects. Minimum intensity active, reported a technician. No observable fear response. Increase to Level 2, Bexmal ordered. The blue light got brighter. The tingling in Katie's mind became stronger. Now she could actually perceive what the device was trying to do. It was projecting images of death and destruction, trying to convince her that she was in mortal danger. Katie found it interesting from a technical standpoint. The aliens had built a machine that could affect thoughts directly. That was impressive engineering. But the fear it was trying to create felt fake, like someone telling her she should be scared instead of actually giving her a reason to be scared. Still, no response, the technician said, sounding confused. Around the chamber, alien delegates whispered among themselves. Some were taking notes frantically. Others just stared at Katie with expressions of disbelief. Level 3, Bexmal said. His voice had lost its confident tone. The sphere pulsed with bright blue energy. Katie felt the device pushing harder against her thoughts, trying to overwhelm her with visions of terror. She saw herself dying in dozens of horrible ways. She experienced the sensation of falling from great heights, drowning in dark water, being chased by monsters, but none of it felt real. It was like being forced to watch someone else's nightmares. Unpleasant, but not actually frightening. This is impossible, whispered the crystal spider delegate. Level 3 breaks most beings instantly. Katie looked around at the worried alien. Faces. Is something supposed to be happening? I feel a little tingly, but that's about it. The silence that followed was so complete that Katie could hear the station's air recycling system humming in the walls. Every alien in the chamber stared at her like she had just claimed to be immortal. Morrison looked proud and worried at the same time. He knew Katie was tough, but even he seemed surprised by her complete lack of reaction. Level 4, Zethkalar commanded. His yellow eyes were fixed on Katie with an intensity that would have been intimidating if she cared about that sort of thing. The fear inducer's glow became almost blinding. Katie felt the device hammering at her mind with waves of artificial terror. It showed her visions of Earth being destroyed, her family dying horribly, herself being tortured by alien monsters. The images were more vivid now, almost real enough to be convincing. But Katie had seen actual death and suffering. She had held dying animals, watched her grandfather pass away peacefully, helped her neighbors through real tragedies. These artificial fears were nothing compared to genuine loss and pain. Level 4 has no effect, the technician reported in a shaky voice. Several alien delegates started backing toward the exits. The walking flower delegate was making distressed sounds. Even some of the Veltar looked nervous. This is unprecedented, Bexmal said. No being has ever resisted level 4 without showing some reaction. Katie was starting to get bored. Look, I appreciate that you built a fancy fear machine, but it's not working on me. Can we please move on to something else? Her casual tone seemed to make the aliens even more upset. A few more delegates left the chamber entirely. Zethkalar stood up from his platform. All 12 feet of him radiated anger and confusion. Maximum intensity, now. Supreme Leader, Bexmal protested. Maximum intensity is dangerous even for observation. The psychological backlash could affect everyone in the chamber. Do it, Zethkalar snarled. The technicians hesitated, then began adjusting their controls. Warning lights flashed around the chamber. Automated voices announced danger in multiple alien languages. The fear inducer began to vibrate in the air. Its blue glow became so intense that Katie had to squint. She could feel the device gathering. Power like a storm building on the horizon. "Everyone behind barriers," Vexmol ordered. "Emergency containment protocols are now in effect." The remaining alien delegates scrambled for cover. Even Morrison moved to a protected position, though he kept watching Katie with concern. The sphere suddenly pulsed with energy so powerful that Katie felt it like a physical blow. The device unleashed everything it had directly into her mind. Pure, concentrated terror flooded her thoughts. Katie experienced her own death 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. She felt her sanity being torn apart by cosmic horrors. Beyond imagination, she watched reality itself collapse into endless darkness while screaming voices told her she was alone and helpless forever. It was the most advanced psychological weapon ever created, designed to reduce any thinking being to a quivering, broken shell of their former self. Katie stood there for 11 seconds, hands clasped behind her back, and watched the light show with mild interest. When the device finally powered down, she blinked a few times and looked around at the alien faces peering at her from behind their protective barriers. "Is there supposed to be something happening?" she asked politely. The effect on the aliens was immediate and catastrophic. Half of the remaining delegates fled the chamber in panic. Others began frantically communicating with their home governments. The technicians stared at their readings in disbelief, running diagnostics on their equipment. But it was Zethkalar's reaction that changed everything. The supreme apex leader, the being who had ruled the galaxy for millennia through careful intimidation and psychological dominance, looked at this small human female who had just shrugged off his ultimate weapon. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zethkalar felt something he had forgotten existed. Fear. Katie noticed the big alien leader had gone very still on his platform. His yellow eyes were wide, and his forearms hung limply at his sides. He looked like someone who had just seen something impossible. "Are you all right?" Katie asked. "You look a little pale." Zethkalar did not answer. He just continued staring at her with an expression of growing terror. Around the chamber, the remaining aliens began to understand what they had just witnessed. They had seen a being that could not be broken, could not be intimidated, could not be made to feel fear. The emergency alarm started blaring 3 hours after the fear-inducer test ended. Katie was in her quarters reading a book about alien agriculture when Captain Morrison knocked on her door. "Sullivan, we need to get to the command center. Something's happened to Zethkalar." Katie put down her book and followed Morrison through the station corridors. Everything felt different now. Aliens who had watched her with curiosity before now pressed against the walls when she walked past. Some actually ran away when they saw her coming. The command center was chaos. Delegates from every species talked loudly in their own languages while technicians ran between computer stations. Ambassador Kelena spotted the humans and hurried over, all 4 arms waving in distress. "The Supreme Leader has vanished," Kelena said. "No one has seen him since the testing concluded. His personal guards are missing as well. Maybe he just went back to his ship," Morrison suggested. Vexmal appeared beside them, his dark scales looking almost black under the emergency lighting. "We checked his ship first. It is empty. The entire Veltar delegation is in panic." Katie looked around. The command center. She could see groups of Veltar clustered together, their yellow eyes wide with fear. They kept glancing at her, then looking away quickly when she noticed. "When did anyone last see him?" she asked. "Immediately after your demonstration," Vexmal sighed carefully. "Security recordings show him leaving the testing chamber, but then the trail goes cold. It is as if he simply vanished from existence." A new voice joined the conversation. "He did not vanish. He fled." Everyone turned to see War Marshal Kethver, the second highest-ranking Veltar official. She was smaller than the males but moved with deadly grace. Her scales were silver instead of green, marking her as extremely old even by Veltar standards. "Marshal," Vexmal said with surprise. "I did not know you were aboard the station." "I arrived on a discreet transport an hour ago," Kethver replied. "The Veltar High Command sent me to assess the situation. What I found is worse than we feared." She gestured toward a large display screen that showed star charts and ship movements. Zefkalar took a small scout ship from the docking bay. "We tracked its course until it reached the neutral zone, then lost contact." Morrison frowned. Why would he run? Even if our test results surprised him, that's no reason to abandon his duties. Kethver's laugh was bitter. "You truly do not understand what happened in that chamber, do you? Your female broke something fundamental in Zefkalar's mind." Katie shifted uncomfortably. She still did not understand why everyone was making such a big deal about her not being scared. "I just stood there. I didn't do anything to him." "Exactly," Kethver said. "You did nothing, and that terrified him more than any weapon could. For 3,000 years, Zefkalar has ruled through fear. His power comes from others believing he is the strongest, most dangerous being in the galaxy." The War Marshal walked to the display screen and pointed at various star systems. "Every world under Veltar control obeys us because they are afraid. Every rival species respects our borders because they fear our retaliation. Fear is the foundation of our entire empire." Katie was beginning to understand. "And when I didn't get scared, it broke that foundation." "Worse than that," Kethver continued. "It proved that fear can be meaningless. If one small human female can ignore our ultimate psychological weapon, what does that say about Veltar supremacy?" Around the command center, other alien delegates had stopped their conversations to listen. Katie noticed they all looked troubled by what they were hearing. "The implications are spreading rapidly throughout our territory," Kethver said. "Word of what happened here has already reached 17 different star systems. 3 colony worlds have stopped responding to official communications." Vexmal looked shocked. "Rebellion?" "Testing boundaries," Kethver corrected. "They want to see if the rumors are true. If humans really cannot be intimidated, then perhaps the Veltar can be challenged as well." Morrison cleared his throat. "With respect, Marshal, this seems like an internal Veltar problem. We came here seeking peaceful membership in the Confederation." Kethver turned her yellow eyes on him. "Nothing about this situation is internal anymore, Captain. Your presence has destabilized the entire galactic order." She activated a communication device on her wrist. A hologram appeared showing another Veltar official who looked extremely agitated. "Report, Commander Vexdale," Kethver ordered. "The situation deteriorates by the hour, Marshal," the hologram said. "The Altarian Republic has demanded an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Zephyrian Collective is mobilizing their defense fleets. Even the traditionally neutral Crystalline Consortium is asking questions about human capabilities." Katie felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. "Are you saying we started some kind of war?" "Not yet," Kethver replied. "But the galaxy is holding its breath. Everyone wants to know what humans are truly capable of. If you can resist our fear inducer, what other advantages does your species possess?" Morrison ran a hand through his hair. "This is getting out of control. Lieutenant Sullivan is just one person. She doesn't represent some kind of superhuman ability, doesn't she?" asked a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Yelsani, the chief researcher who had been studying human psychological profiles. The insect-like being carried a tablet covered in data readings. "I have been analyzing the test results," Dr. Yelsani continued. "The human female's responses are not just unusual, they are unprecedented. Her brain activity during the fear-inducer exposure showed patterns we have never observed in any species." Katie groaned. Please don't tell me you think I'm some kind of mutant. Not a mutant, Dr. Yelsani said. Simply a normal product of your evolutionary environment. But that environment is so extreme that normal for you is impossible for everyone else. The insect researcher activated her tablet, showing brain scan comparisons. Look at these patterns. When most beings experience the fear inducer, their neural activity spikes dramatically. Stress hormones flood their systems. Their minds essentially panic. She switched to Katie's readings. Your brain barely registered the device as a threat. Your stress hormone levels actually decreased slightly during the test. It is as if your mind categorized the ultimate fear weapon as a minor annoyance. Vexmal studied the data with growing concern. If this is normal for humans, then our entire understanding of psychological warfare needs revision. The ramifications extend far beyond military applications, Dr. Yelsani said. If humans cannot be intimidated through conventional means, it fundamentally alters every aspect of interspecies relations. Diplomacy, trade agreements, territorial disputes, everything relies on the implicit threat of consequences. Katie felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes staring at her. Look, I'm just a ranch girl from Montana. I'm not trying to upset anyone's political system. I just want to do my job and go home. Her simple, honest statement seemed to make the situation worse. Several alien delegates began talking frantically among themselves. Ambassador Kellena stepped forward nervously. Lieutenant Sullivan, may I ask you a personal question? Sure. When you were growing up on your ranch, did you ever feel afraid of anything? Katie thought about it. Of course I did. I was scared when my little brother got hurt. I worried about losing our animals in bad weather. I feared disappointing my parents. But physical danger? Kellena pressed. Wild animals, natural disasters, equipment accidents? Those things were just part of life, Katie said. You learn to handle them. Being scared doesn't help, so you focus on solving the problem instead. The aliens exchanged meaningful looks. Katie realized she had said something significant, but she was not sure what. Dr. Yelsani made notes on her tablet. Fascinating. The subject views potentially lethal situations as routine challenges rather than existential threats. War Marshal Kethver's communication device chimed with an urgent message. She read it quickly, and her scales seemed to darken with worry. The situation has escalated, she announced. The Hive Collective just declared emergency protocols. They are demanding that all humans be quarantined until we can properly assess their capabilities. Morrison stepped forward angrily. That's outrageous. We're not some kind of dangerous animals. Are you not? Kethver asked quietly. Your female casually withstood a weapon that breaks the strongest warriors of every known species. From our perspective, humans now appear to be psychologically immune to control or coercion. Katie finally understood why everyone was so upset. It was not about her personally. It was about what she represented. To these aliens, humans had just proven they could not be controlled through fear, which was apparently how the galaxy maintained order. What happens now? She asked. Kethver looked at the star charts still displayed on the screen. Now we find out if 3,000 years of galactic civilization can survive the knowledge that fear has limits. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as an automated voice announced. Incoming ships. Multiple vessels approaching, reported a station technician. I'm reading Altarian Republic cruisers, Zephyrian battle squadrons, and unidentified craft from at least 6 other species. Morrison grabbed Katie's arm. We need to get you somewhere safe. Why? Katie asked. What do they want with me? 6 months later, Katie stood on the observation deck of Harmony Point and watched ships from dozens of different species arriving for what everyone was calling the new Galactic Assembly. The old Confederation had collapsed completely 3 weeks after Zethkalar's disappearance, but something new was being built in its place. Captain Morrison, now Ambassador Morrison, joined her at the viewing window. He looked tired but pleased. The past months had been the busiest of his career. Hard to believe it all started with you not being scared of that machine, he said. Katie smiled. I still don't understand why that was such a big deal. But I'm glad things are working out. Working out was an understatement. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The first major shock came when the Veltar Empire fragmented completely. Without Zethkalar's intimidating presence, and with proof that their psychological weapons could be resisted, rebellions broke out across their territory. 17 colony worlds declared independence in the first month. The remaining Veltar leadership tried to maintain control, but their authority crumbled when people stopped being afraid of them. War Marshal Kethver had adapted better than most of her species. She now served as the Veltar representative to the new assembly, working to rebuild her people's reputation through cooperation rather than fear. The Altarian delegation just arrived, Morrison noted, pointing to a cluster of elegant ships approaching the station. Admiral Corthenus wants to meet with you personally. Katie groaned. Another one? How many alien leaders want to shake hands with the girl who broke the galaxy? Most of them, Morrison admitted. You've become a symbol of something they never thought possible. The idea that beings can be truly free from intimidation. The changes had been remarkable to watch. Species that had cowered under Veltar rule for centuries were now exploring, expanding, creating art and technology without fear of punishment. The Crystalline Consortium had announced 3 major scientific breakthroughs just last month. The Hive Collective was composing music for the first time in their recorded history. Dr. Yelsani approached them, carrying her ever-present tablet of research data. The insect researcher had become something of a celebrity herself, studying the psychological changes spreading across the galaxy. Lieutenant Sullivan, Dr. Yelsani said, I have the latest reports from the human integration programs. The results continue to exceed all expectations. Katie looked at the data on the tablet. After word spread about human psychological resilience, dozens of species had requested human advisors, teachers, and consultants. Not for military purposes, but to learn how to overcome fear in their own lives. The Zephyrian Meditation Centers report a 40% increase in participation, Dr. Yelsani continued. Apparently, knowing that fear can be overcome makes it easier for them to try overcoming it themselves. The therapy programs are showing similar results, Morrison added. Who would have thought that the galaxy was full of beings who just needed to learn they didn't have to be afraid all the time? Katie read through more reports. Human psychologists were working with alien species to develop new forms of mental health treatment. Human farmers were teaching sustainable agriculture to worlds that had been too afraid to experiment with new techniques. Human engineers were collaborating on projects that previous governments had considered too risky to attempt. It's like the entire galaxy was holding its breath for 3,000 years, Katie observed, and now everyone can finally exhale. Ambassador Kelena joined their group, moving with the graceful confidence that had replaced the nervous energy Katie remembered from their first meeting. The morning session went well, Kelena reported. We've reached preliminary agreements on trade route security and resource sharing. The consortium wants to establish joint research stations with human universities. Katie was proud of how Earth had responded to the crisis. Instead of taking advantage of their newfound reputation, humanity had focused on helping other species develop their own resilience. The message from Earth was clear. Being unafraid was not about being superior. It was about being free. Any word on the search for Zethkalar? Morrison asked. Kelena's expression grew somber. The scout teams found his ship yesterday. Katie felt her stomach drop. Is he dead? No, but ... Kelena paused. Perhaps it would be easier to show you. She led them to a secure communication room where a medical hologram was waiting. The doctor was a Veltar, but younger than any Katie had met before. "This is Dr. Nexkalar, Zefkalar's nephew," Kelena explained. "He has been treating the former Supreme Leader." The young doctor activated a recording. It showed a medical facility room with a single patient lying in a bed. Katie recognized Zefkalar immediately, but he looked completely different. The powerful, intimidating leader had become a shell of his former self. "Uncle has been in this state for 6 months," Dr. Nexkalar explained. "Physically, he is healthy, but mentally ... He cannot accept what he witnessed. His mind has retreated so deeply that he barely responds to external stimuli." Katie watched the recording with growing sadness. Zefkalar stared at the ceiling with empty eyes, occasionally muttering words that the doctor's translation did not pick up. "What is he saying?" she asked. Dr. Nexkalar hesitated. "He keeps repeating impossible," and she did not flinch. Over and over, for hours at a time. Katie felt terrible. She had never wanted to hurt anyone, certainly not to break someone's mind completely. "Is there anything we can do to help him?" Morrison asked. "Perhaps," Dr. Nexkalar said. "Our psychologists believe he might recover if he could understand what happened. If he could accept that beings like Miss Sullivan exist without it destroying his worldview." Katie made a decision. "I want to see him." Everyone in the room looked surprised. "Lieutenant," Morrison said carefully, "that might not be wise. Seeing you could make his condition worse. Or it might help him understand that I'm just a normal person," Katie replied. "Not some kind of monster or weapon. Maybe if he talks to me, he'll realize there's nothing to be afraid of." Dr. Yelsani checked her tablet. From a research perspective, the interaction could provide valuable data about fear response recovery. "It's Katie's choice," Morrison said finally. "But I'm coming with you." 2 days later, Katie found herself in a medical transport heading toward the neutral world where Zefkalar was being treated. She felt nervous for the first time in months, not because she was afraid, but because she genuinely wanted to help someone who was suffering. The medical facility was clean and peaceful, with gardens visible through large windows. Dr. Nexkalar led them to Zefkalar's room, warning them again that the former Supreme Leader might not respond at all. Zefkalar lay in his bed exactly as he had appeared in the recording. His eyes stared at nothing, and his massive frame seemed somehow diminished. Katie approached slowly and sat in a chair beside the bed. "Hello," she said quietly. "My name is Katie Sullivan. I think we met before, but things got a little crazy." No response. Zefkalar continued staring at the ceiling. Katie tried a different approach. "I heard you've been having a rough time. I'm sorry about that. I never meant to upset anyone." Still nothing. Katie looked at Morrison, who shrugged helplessly. "You know," Katie continued, "where I come from, we have a saying. When you fall off a horse, the best thing to do is get back on. Not because you're not scared, but because being scared is normal and you can't let it stop you from living." For the first time in 6 months, Zefkalar's eyes moved. He turned his head slightly to look at Katie. "You ... spoke," he whispered in a voice like rustling leaves. "I talk a lot, actually," Katie said with a smile. "My brother says I never shut up." Zefkalar struggled to sit up. Dr. Nexkalar moved to help him, but Katie waved him back. "You are real," Zefkalar said, studying Katie's face. "You are the one who did not flinch. I'm the one who didn't get scared by your machine, yeah. But I'm also the one who gets nervous talking to important people, who misses her family, and who still can't figure out how alien toilets work." Something that might have been a smile crossed Zefkalar's face. "You are ... ordinary. Very ordinary," Katie confirmed. "That's what everyone keeps trying to tell you." Humans aren't special because we can't feel fear. We just grew up learning to deal with it differently. Zeth Kalar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. I built my life on the belief that fear was absolute, that all beings would bow before sufficient terror. Fear is real, Katie said, but it doesn't have to control you. That's all we figured out. And if fear does not control... Zeth Kalar paused, working through the implications. Then beings are truly free to choose. Now you're getting it, Katie said. Turns out, when people aren't scared all the time, they do pretty amazing things. Zeth Kalar looked out the window at the gardens. What happens to someone like me? Someone who ruled through fear? Katie considered the question seriously. You learn to do something else. The galaxy's got plenty of problems that need solving. Maybe you could help fix them instead of causing them. 6 months later, Katie stood once again on Harmony Point's observation deck, but this time she was not alone. Zeth Kalar stood beside her, no longer the supreme leader, but now serving as a rehabilitation counselor for former Veltar officials struggling to adapt to the new galaxy.